So, yeah, my name's Paul. As you can probably tell by the logo on the back of this, I'm not a Mac person yet. And I say yet because I probably will slide to it shortly. Anyone wants to offload a decent second-hand machine, let me know. So, my history and why I'm here, I suppose. Well, one, I'm Tom's friend. So, if you don't like it, blame him. And I've worked in change in healthcare for a long time. So I'm a mental health nurse by background. I've done quite a lot of leadership and management development stuff and coaching, specialising in big changes across multiple organisations at once. Some of those are tech-based, some of those are tech-assisted. Never purely tech though, so certainly different to you guys. So, when we think of change, so, if I said to you, oh, we're going to change how you work tomorrow, you might go through some of these things. Whether it's apprehension, fear. Yes. I've just seen the perfect emoji for it. And if that's how you feel, anyone in your organisation feels the same way. So the moment there's change happening, you've got potentially a negative mindset in place. Sometimes there's possibilities there, there's aspiration, there's opportunity, but it's only a few people will reside in that. Most of them reside in that dread of, oh, again. And then if we throw at them language about change, and this is only a snapshot of the words you might find around it, whether it's transformational, exploitative, cultural change, operational, it could be incremental. People are bewildered by it. And the number of changes running at people at one time can be huge. Most people, if you ask them why do they think changes are happening, they'll say it's budgetary. It's all about money. Often, that's an underlying cause, but there are many other things there. It could be about security, it could be about taking on new opportunities that come out. It could just be, there's a slicker way of doing this. You'll hear people saying, oh, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And it's like, okay, it's not broke, but your life would be so much easier. So it's just trying to get people to that space. But you throw these words at people, whatever language you use, people will be bewildered by it. And the word transformational is often overused. So most people say, oh, we're doing transformational change, and they're not. It's an incremental step. Transformation should change the environment around you. Reset the rules, be disruptive. Something that Apple are famous for. And then that's what happens. So you've got somebody out there working on change or been told they've got to change, completely bewildered. They might think that they're struggling to get through their working day. And all of a sudden there's this new load lands. So the reason I'm sort of giving you this first is to try and show you what you're working with when you're trying to work with people. So this is the change curve. It's not really a change curve. It gets used for everything. It's the Kubler-Ross bereavement model that has been readapted multiple times over. But you'll be aware of this. The shock, the denial, the frustration, what's the point? So you say, I might give it a go. People then will decide if they carry on with it. Then it might get integrated. The problem with anything, if you put it into a 2D model, is it fails. Because that describes it as a line. People blatantly go between these points here. They might be in denial and depression and then frustration, and around until they get to that point there. So don't think of it as a linear process. It's more of a where are they today. If ever you've seen those which blob are you diagrams, describe who you are on this page, that's it. Like one day maybe I'm up for this and I've had a bad night's sleep and they're back in depression again. And they don't just have one change happening. You might be talking to them about one change, but there's loads of other changes happening around them at the same time. So if you're working with people, let's say, on a shop floor, maybe they've got a change about how they work with customers. Maybe there's then change about how a human resources policy or something. And then there's a change you're asking them to do. So it doesn't just sit in isolation. There are multiple curves of this happening at all times. I knew I haven't made it too many. right, that can lead to change fatigue. And it's really important to understand that the biggest cause of that is repeated changes. So, don't get me wrong, I can work in a lean model and look at continuous improvement, but what I'm aware that is a code word for is change after change after change after change. And that's hard for people. So, they might feel like they're constantly behind. They're never keeping up. They might feel like any new initiative is just exhausting. They might have a great idea, but they're not going to share it because that'll mean more change. They'll be irritable, disengaged, checked out, and that's not just people in the last presentation of the day. Adapting just feels impossible. The idea of change, I can't cope with this anymore, and they can't keep up. So frequent changes, failed changes, and sudden and unplanned changes. Now, we can't avoid these ones. They happen. But we've got to remember the impact of them. And it might mean we have to pause something else. All of that, when it gets to its worst point, can lead to burnout. I know Chris mentioned burnout yesterday, but it's a real thing. You know, if we look at some of those things there, lack of motivation, feeling tired or drained, not being able to concentrate, having headaches all the time, not being able to do your job, you might be running harder and harder and harder but getting nowhere. If you think, I used to do a 37.5-hour week, I now do 60, but I'm not achieving any more, decreased performance. You get irritable when you get like that. You withdraw from social activities. When our minds struggle, the first thing we cut out is the frivolous, the nice to do, the playtime. Yet we expect our mind to get better. So that happens, and it almost fuels a cycle again. And physical symptoms, you might have nausea, might have racing heart at times, shortness of breath. Lots of people still go to work like that, and we wonder why they can't perform in their role. So we've got to be really careful, and if that's you, and I touch a nerve by bringing it up, come and see me afterwards. As I said, I am a mental health nurse, and we'll talk about it. But yeah, I'm only putting this in there to show people where it's at, but it's also really important for people to be aware of. So, what can we do about it? And that's what the real bit of this session's for. That was just the intro. First thing, be considerate. You know, you've got somebody on the phone. Whether you're first line and it's the 40th call of the same thing that day, or wherever else you are, just be considerate. You know, ask people, what? You sound really pressured at the moment, what's happening? Just take a moment to understand. It might be they think, it'll only be a 5-minute job. I'll call up, if it's help desk, for instance, and I'll have a patient booked in, or I'll be on the shop floor in 10 minutes' time. And all of a sudden it's a 40-minute call. It's their impact. So ask them, what's happening for you? Listen to that. Put yourself in their shoes almost. Because you probably have experienced exactly the same things they are. Develop people. So if ever you get that opportunity just to share a nugget with somebody, you might stop them phoning up so often. If you can share those nuggets, it might save them doing things that are the wrong way round. I think that's one of the key things, that we assume everyone knows what they're doing. And I can guarantee, if they are not a tech deployed staff member, they don't know what they're doing. Right? Assume they know nothing and work from there. You'll find some people are a bit better, but I'd rather teach 1 or 2 people that are suck eggs than just leave loads of others in the dark. So develop them. It will make them feel more confident with it. When they see a problem with computing or a request comes down to change something, they're in that state of panic already. So help develop them, that might reduce that. Remember, your priority isn't theirs. And that's one of the biggest things we change, whether it's from a technical point of view, a budgetary one, whatever. Everyone has multiple priorities. And it's like, but it's urgent, I need them to do it now. And it's like, yes, but I've got 17 other things that are urgent. And who says this one's top? So remember that, and maybe try and think about how it can be structured. What you find easy, others find daunting. They really do. It's scary times. For you, it might be easy. You think, oh, why are they struggling with that? I can just do that in my sleep. Yeah, that's why they're struggling with it, because they can't. You know, you guys are really good at what you do. The people out there just are not. Relationships is a key thing. We'll come more into the relationship topic as we go forward. but streamlining. If there's one way of doing a chunk of changes together, that's probably going to be more helpful for your staff than change on Monday, change on Wednesday, change on Friday. Get it all done on Monday. Never launch something on a Friday, ever. Terrible. Don't care if it delays it by leaving it till Monday after. There's no one in to support people on a Saturday. So yeah, but streamline things. Try and think about how you can group things together so it's not so much of a jarring change for people on a continuous basis. And I might be teaching you some eggs here, because I'm sure these are the things you would appreciate if you were sort of, having to do changes because somebody else is making them happen. We did a poll on the group. Some people responded. Well done if you did. If you didn't, endless shame. No. Well, most people were in a position of they decide some changes and they get forced to do changes. A few people felt they only directed the changes. We'll come back to that in a second. They're deluded. And a couple of people said they only ever just roll out change. So if you think that you only ever direct change, I'm sure there are things that happen outside of your control. I'm sure you'll come into work and find that Apple did an update they hadn't told you about. All of a sudden you've got to panic and respond to that. So you're not directing that change at that point. You might be directing the response to it, but change happens to us all in those different sort of approaches of whether we're affected by it or whether we're choosing it. You choose stuff about your home, for instance, so you direct those changes. Everyone has these changes happening, but when it becomes work, we get a bit more daunted by it because there's less control. So, where are we? That's fine. Reason why. This is so important. So this is a work of a guy called Simon Sinek. He's a American psychologist working in business development and leadership. He's actually, if you're on LinkedIn, follow his stuff. It's normally quite uplifting and helpful. So when we're talking about change, we normally tell people what they need to do. You just need to do this, done. You might need to tell them how to do it if they need a bit of development or a bit of education or something. There might be a process there. But we rarely tell people why. So if I told you all now to leave the room, you'd probably go, what? Just walk through the door? Really? If I said, leave the room now, there's a fire, you'd all go pretty quick. And it's the same with anything that we do in work. Give people a why. So even if it's, I think Chris said it earlier, we did this because it achieved X, Y, and Z. So it might be, we need to do this to make sure our systems remain secure, because there's a massive financial risk if we don't, or data risk or whatever. But give people that why. It helps them to know. It then helps them with all those things about, why are we doing change again and again and again? It's like, if it's, we've got to do this because there's been an update we didn't know about, tell them. It's not your fault. Never be the one that passes the buck, but if it's like, actually an external agency has caused this, like Apple or whoever, say it. We're not just doing this for fun, we have to do it. But give people the why. It really helps to create a solid relationship and more likelihood that people will carry on with the change or carry on doing whatever they need to do differently. And it's really important, this reason why. One of the other things he talks about is, people should have a vision. And if they can't get their own vision, get somebody else's. And that might sound a bit like a cop-out, like I'm just copying their vision. If we look at politicians, hate to stray into this topic, but they do this all the time. Sometimes it's positive. Look at Barack Obama, about change, about positivity. Sometimes it's negativity. I'll not go there because that's when it will get heated. But you can imagine those yourself. But that reason why is what motivates people. So if they can do that, we need to think about that in how we do changes, how we work with the people who effectively are using our systems. So, Kotter is sort of, I heard somebody earlier referring to, the demo gods, etc. This guy's the change god. Another American psychologist working in business development, and he first off came up with the 8 stages of change. They can be seen on that circle there. They've been around for ages. And they're all true and they all work. But he realised it wasn't quite enough. And he came up with this model over here. So we're used to hierarchies, and as in organisational hierarchies. And they're brilliant. They can show you where you sit, who your manager is, what the line of reporting is. But quite often when we've got an issue, it has to go up to a nexus point and back down. And that can create siloisation, that people just are in different tubs. They think that everything's against them from everywhere else. And to sum it up, what the suggestion is, you get the organogram, the lovely chart, screw it up, straighten out your paper again, and all those crease lines that join people up, they're the relationships you need to have. So if that happens, you then know, oh, I don't have to go all the way up here for it to come back down to training, or I can just call the person in training. And it becomes okay. And that's what actually makes change happen quicker. So we get stuck in silos, we have more of those problems entrenched. If we start working across the way, and it's not about not letting people know what's happening, it'll be, I think Chris said yesterday about saying what you've done in a day. Done some brilliant work with training, this will be going live tomorrow. You just own it that it was shared work. But that actually really helps, and it helps with that reason why, because the people understand it better, because you've worked with them. It helps with the delivery, that people might actually have a passion for it and keep going with it. It also helps you get things unstuck. So in my experience, I've had loads of changes where people haven't spoken to the right people. If I think about one in my very last role, before I left the NHS, we had a team that were struggling. They worked out in other providers' buildings, being able to access the secure network for our patient record was all up in the air. Some places it worked, some it didn't. And I got told when I got there, we spent 4 years on this, and we still can't get anywhere. Who have you spoken to? We call help desk. Yeah, it's not a help desk problem. I took my approach, which is ask someone else. And I knew they weren't quite the right person, but I knew they were helpful because I'd worked with them on other things before. They then said, oh no, it's not me, but... And they literally handed me to the next person, called me on the Teams call. Within 3 weeks, it was sorted. That released about 3 appointments a week per clinician, which is huge. We were seeing about 50 people a week. So 3 meant I got, three free weeks of work out of each person. So it's quite significant. Small things matter. So yeah, always ask someone else. I've put this in because I've heard people talking about the unknown changes that come from Apple. So VUCA is an acronym developed by the American military. They developed it in the early 80s, I believe. And it describes the world around us. We have volatility. We have complexity. Everything's independent on everything else. Things are uncertain. We don't know where they're going. And ambiguity. Loads of different people can interpret things differently. Which is one of the problems when we send messages out. People read it the way they want to read it. So that's the world we live in. And it feels like that just seems to get faster and faster. 2 years ago, things around the world weren't stable, but they were relatively calm. Now we have a president abducted, an unnecessary war. I could go on, but we have lots of things that are all of a sudden throwing everything in the air. That drives things like chip prices up, oil prices. All of these things happen, and we've got to be able to respond to it. And it's okay to say that these are the problems that we face and accepting it, and that is important. But how do we actually respond to it? So having vision, understanding where it is we're going. As a group, you are not a Mac department and IT department. You are part of an organisation. So are you all heading in the same direction? Do you know what the goal is that you all share? Having understanding, so getting feedback, revising plans, making sure it still fits when you've got to change something quite quickly. Back to those change curves where they're all stacked on each other. It could be that, we just need to tweak this bit, but it might impact all those other change curves that are happening. Having a plan and sticking with it, and having actionable results. So that at any point if something changes, you know exactly where you are, and where you're stepping from. Because people will assume they're back at square one. and be really clear with that. You might want to call that, benefit realisation, etc., but not at the end of a project, but running alongside it. That you're just saying, right, we're here today, we'll move to there next week. Does fit this sort of sprint structure in agile working. And agility, be flexible, and that can be really hard. You work with systems that are fairly rigid, but having that flexibility of, okay, we need to achieve the same thing, but we need to do it differently now because whatever's changed, this rule doesn't work anymore. How you get there. If we can live like that, we cope better with the unexpected. And that's the hard bit. Unexpected change will happen. You cannot avoid it, but being in the best place for it will help you. So, a few top tips, and then we'll give you a chance to ask questions if you've got any. So this comes from the work of Stephen Covey. Seek first to understand, and then be understood. It sounds obvious, but so many times we pick up a phone, we speak to somebody, we tell them what we need. But actually you don't know what mindset that person's in, what they're coping with, even if it's an okay time to talk. So it might be, oh, hi, I need to speak to you. Is now a good time? Or do you want to call back later? Might be the first thing. And then, okay, what have you got on today? Oh, do you have got any capacity for something? But do it in a conversational way, not a way of like trying to trick them and catch them out. It's about understanding where they're at. If you're working with anyone out there who's just using your equipment effectively, they'll have 101 other things on. They're not sat waiting for your call. Which wall is your ladder against? So effective could be deemed that I climbed the ladder 3 times today. Efficient would have been if I put it against the right wall first, I've only climbed it once. And I think that's one of those things about when you're looking at change, are we heading in the right direction? Are we going to end up creating an extra change for no reason? So when you've got that organisational vision, you know where you're going, you know what your goals are, everything should align to that. Because everyone's in it together. I had staff who used to complain about our payroll team and accounts. It's like, well, if we didn't have the money, you wouldn't get paid. You wouldn't be here. They just couldn't join the dots up. And that happens sometimes that, sadly, people in IT often get clubbed together like the corporate of a business, and it can feel adversarial. So if we do the work on the relationships and understanding each other, it stops that from happening. And you can head forward together so that people can say, actually, IT will do this, we'll do that, and everything works in a flow. Involve others. One of the best ways of working out change and where to go and visioning is to ask people. You ask people to come up with ideas. The first 3 are the same 3 they always come up with. Ignore them. Ask them for more. Then ask them for more again, and those ones will probably be helpful. But involve people. Get them around the table. People won't be against your change if they've helped come up with what the change is, if it's an organisational thing, if it's about having an end-user liaison group so that people out there in the workforce can take those changes out and be your advocates. That's a brilliant idea. We introduced clinical staff who worked alongside our IT team. So when they had big changes coming, they'd come in and learn, and they'd go out and be ambassadors effectively and help develop. Not quite train the trainer, but along those lines. Be human. The same things that bother you and annoy you, bother them. Annoy the other people you're working with. So just understand that. Be alongside them. If anyone drank too much last night, they'll have a headache. I won't screech at you just for that reason. No, I'm also not Ariana Grande. So, challenges, they come, but have contingencies. You don't have to work everyone through to the nth degree. It's almost like, we'll do this, and if that doesn't work, we've got a backup plan. Have that in place. It helps, and it helps people to know that that's there. It takes time and energy. Relationships are hard. People, we're all messy. So give that time, give it energy. For anyone working the change at the other end, they've got habits to overcome. It can take 40 repeats to overcome a habit, is the theory. Lots of different images for that, but think about giving up smoking. Most people try to give up 7 times before they manage it. So it takes time to overcome habit. Look after you. If you're not in the right place, you won't be able to help others with whatever it is that you want them to do. So if you're at work, burnt out, presenteeism, you're there but you're just a shell, maybe even mentally checked out, maybe you need to look after you. Again, if you want to talk about that, come and see me. You're not in trouble, it's okay. And get some consensus on a reason why, and make sure that's a thread in all communication. In order to achieve this, we need to do this, this, and this. Always lead with a why. And a few common traps. Lewin's model, very simple. We unfreeze the situation, we change it, and it refreezes. The trap is in the change bit, when people resist, and they form it back to the unfreeze model, and it refreezes there. So it needs to be how have we actually shown the change, and it's different. Bad data, we all know, can trip anything up. Be aware of it. Also, data being used for the wrong end, so badly manipulated statistics, for instance. Some people, it will feel like they have the art of resistance to a T. It's not, it's just how they're portraying. They're the people, if you get them on side, things will go so much easier. Changes that are really just a name change. Why put the effort in? It's not worth it. And think about the environment. When you planned the change, it might have been winter. And snowy, there was no leaves on the trees, etc. By the time you deliver it, it's summer. There's trees in the way and you can't see where you're going. So remember to adapt as the environment changes around you. Any questions? I think I'm on time. So what we will say, open to questions, happy with whatever they are. Couple of rules. One, wait for the microphone. That way, people on the video will know what the question is rather than me just randomly talking about stuff. Two, if it's of a personal nature, think about what you're willing to share in front of this group of people and a video that's going to be online. When people say, I've got a friend who, most people know you mean I. So, be careful. So, any questions? I'm going to play pass the parcel. Don't take a layer off.
So at what point do you... So obviously we work with people and sometimes they are quite objective to change.
Yep.
And, you know, we've all worked with people like this and it's like, hey, I want to make this change. And they say no constantly over and over again. We've applied all of your logic and everything to it. At what point do we escalate and how do we do that?
Okay.
You know, successfully without, you know, throwing them under a bus, basically.
Yeah, I think the first step is to think, it's not just we've worked with people like that, we have probably all been that person at some point, because none of us are perfect. Think why you're in the wrong room. The second thing would be about asking them why they're like that. Just saying, you know, I'm really struggling, we've got to do these things for this reason, can you tell me why you're objecting? What is it that makes you keep saying no? I've come across this before where it's like, oh, but there will be risks, and it's like, there are risks in the current delivery. You know, and we're going to replace some of those with more palatable risks. But it's trying to work out what their reason to say no is. Could just be, I just don't have time. And then it's looking, okay, when do you have time? This is an organisational objective, so if it's going to be delayed too far, we'll have to escalate. Just be really open about it. They have the choice then, don't they? Also, I know it's going to go on the video, but I don't really care. There are approaches that can work for people. Like anything, there's always a point where it becomes unstuck. And you can't develop plans for arseholes. Right? They happen, they exist, and they can sap your energy. So the approach I find helps is what I call the logic box. You make it very clear, well, we need to achieve this, do you agree with that? Yeah. This is how we're going to do it. Does that make sense? Yeah. So, do you agree with it or not? And you get into a point where if they say no, they look stupid. Okay? And if that's in a meeting, that's fine. Because even better, they want to look stupid in front of people. But if you've got that point where you've tried everything else you can do, it's like, okay, maybe they're just resisting for the sake of it, the art of the resistance. So how do we open that up, give them that opportunity to change their course, and if not, sadly, sometimes you have to sort of name it. But yeah, the logic box I've had to use very specifically with one person. And it was really interesting, the things that she would disagree with and spout off about outside a meeting, all of a sudden she'd agree with. Because if she'd said no, she'd look stupid. I'm saying she because it's a real person, sorry. But I won't name them. Not on the video anyway. Like, she'll never find it. Is that okay? Cool. Anybody else? At the front? I'll pass the microphone forward. Don't hit him over the head with it.
Hi, thank you so much for all this talk. So I've got a friend, and it's me.
Rub cream on it twice a day.
So I'm implementing a change at my current organization, and my style has always been communicate the why and the how. Yes, people will not read it, but at the same time, it's there for them to check.
Mm-hmm.
So this change is going to happen. The only thing is I want to ease it down on them. I just don't want them to feel it's enforced on them, which is the case.
Yeah.
So beside the communication, is there anything that I should be doing beside the why and how to make it easier for them?
I think the why is the first thing, most important. Like, this is why it's happening. Because everyone has that, it's change. Give them the why, this is why we need to do it. It's not overly a choice, but we're going to do it gently. So you show them that actually you're softening it. The how, make sure you've had somebody read any guidance documents, etc., who isn't a technical person, and get their feedback. Because sometimes we're talking a language that other people don't understand, and we don't realise we're doing it. It might be you assume knowledge. Like, I had a nurse who didn't know what an Ethernet cable was. Right? Don't assume anything. Give them pictures if possible, but make it easy to read. Keep it simple. What's the fewest steps? They probably don't need to have contingency on there, unless it's if this doesn't work, call this person. Keep it simple, but why? And I always get stuff checked out, because language can make them struggle. Probably got time for one more quick question. No hand showing. Last offer. Okay, so it gives me a second just to say, change is daunting. It's some of the hardest work we do. You think about those things that are the biggest life stressors. Moving house, getting married, getting a new job, they're all changes. So know that every change has the same emotional effects. Maybe the intensity is different if you're moving house or getting married. I'm here. As I said, I left the NHS. If anyone wants to maybe talk to me about how I could help them with change, come and see me and I'll give you a card and we can talk about it later. So that's my sales pitch done. Thank you.